Yeah. Okay. Fine. So let's start. Let's get into it. So, um, I have a couple of questions written down, and I'll ask, and then we can all discuss. So, first, I'm going to read a particular passage that's really struck me, and then we'll talk about that and what that means for each and everyone. So
Can
it's
you
on
also
page
give us the
80.
page number?
Yes,
Okay, good.
page 80, and the second paragraph. I'm going to start from there. So,
Page 80.
do you think it is easy to send all of you to school and you refuse to do as you are told? George, stand up. He stood up and faced my dad. Today, in the presence of my mother, my aunt, my wife, I will say this only once. From today henceforth, if any of the children disobeys you, you should use a cane and beat them. You follow? He's,
Yes.
he mumbled something about not raising spoiled children and stormed out. Everyone else slowly dispersed. I lay in bed that night, wondering what had happened to me during the meeting. Okay, so what struck me about this is how the dad gave um, authority or so much power to the house boy and actually asked them to beat his kids if they disobey him. And I just want to know what you guys all think about this. So I'm not going to say if it's bad or wrong, but I just want us to discuss it. This notion of giving, first of all, beating your kids, and secondly, giving the permission to other adults, and worst of all, not even relatives, but just in general, having giving the permission to other adults to beat your kids if these adults feel the kids are being disobedient. So who wants to start? Does
I could
anyone have
start.
any opinion on that? Yes.
I could start.
Okay, Doyle.
Okay, so I would go to what happened before going to giving the authority, because
Mm-hmm.
I think those two things go hand in hand together. Now, if your child comes to you and complains about certain things, I know that we have children who have the tendency to exaggerate, but there must be an iota of truth in a child telling you someone has been beating them or someone has been maltreating them. I remember when we were younger, when I was like 5, we had this house help, Brother Michael, and Brother Michael would do all of the house chores. But the only thing that he would do is when my mom was not around and he served food, he would take all of our meat and fish, as trivial as that may sound, you know. And then at some point, my sister was like, I'm telling my mom, and she told my mom, and my mom was like, how come Michael, who is so good, would take all of your fish and your meat? But you know what my mom did? At some point the next week, my mom came back home unannounced and caught Michael eating all of our fish and our meat, you know. So that brings me to the point that some parents might not take this serious, but it would serve a purpose to investigate what is happening behind that child's complaint. And then another thing is, if a child complains about something, you going openly against that child's complaint, you kind of like take away the power in that child. You kind of like turn that child into a liar, and make you make that child um powerless, and that is exactly what we saw in this case, because her parents not taking her complaint seriously, not even trying to look into the truth or the half truth of her complaint. They made her powerless, and they kind of like stifled all of her will to come up and complain. And they made her think, oh, what if I complain again? What would daddy do to me? After all, daddy has told him, George, to beat me up. What will he do to me? So I really found that part in this book. I really found I could even get into the book and really punch the dad in the face, because it was totally wrong of him to cede the authority to the houseboy. No matter what how trustworthy the house help is, or whoever it is. It can also be siblings, it can also be relatives, but you just don't do that to a child.
Okay, thanks, Dorothy, for your input. Does anyone else have any opinion about, giving authority to other adults, most especially relatives, the houseboy, um, to beat the kids whenever they disobey them? Anyone
Yes,
else have anything
yes,
to say?
I do. Can I say something? This Karen.
Okay,
To add to what Dorothy just said, you know, our parents, they believe a lot in our big brothers, sisters, relatives that live with us, and they want to empower them to guide us. And I don't see anything wrong in that. But what really made me angry was the fact that they didn't listen to her. Whatever she said was being doubted. So as parents now, we should try to listen to our kids. When they tell us something, let's take them behind and try to question them more. And even if when we empower the adults to correct them when they do something wrong, let's try also to caution them. Don't just give them the authority to correct the kid, and you don't even follow or even ask the method, how he does it. So they overgave him the power which was abused, and they believed so much in him, which rather caused harm than good. So it really feels bad, but let's try as parents to follow up and use our own ways to investigate. When the child tells us this person is beating me or doing something to me that is not correct, let's always try to use other means to investigate. That's
okay,
all.
Karen, thanks for your input. I really like the point you made about, really following up, even if you give power to or empower an older brother or something to be able to correct the child. But it's always good as a parent to really follow up and also see how, in what way they are correcting the child, and make sure it's within reason. So I found that the input of yours really pertinent.
Can I have
So
an input?
who else?
I would like to say something.
Okay, maybe it's because they're not seeing me.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, and Delphine, you can speak then. Goom, you can
Yeah.
speak
Okay,
after Delphine.
So yeah,
okay.
I just wanted to add that that particular scene, I think it was really possible because I don't know how it is today, but back then when we're growing up, children really didn't have relationship with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Children really didn't talk. Parents didn't talk with their children. Children were supposed to be silent. Were
And
not supposed to be
another,
heard. So because of that, it was very
exactly.
easy for them to
Mm-hmm.
believe George and think she was lying. And I think nowadays parents, looking at such stories, parents really need to build relationships with their children.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay, you want me to
Okay,
follow up?
right.
Okay,
Yes.
that was exactly what I wanted to say. I was going to say that there are two things that are missing in that scenario that led to what happened. Right. First things first is communication within a family, and especially a large family like that one. I've lived in that, not like my family, but like an uncle's family, where there isn't that communication with your parents, because there's like this strata of communication. Before you go talk to the parents, you must have passed through a big sister or big sister, big sister. Like the parents are like a phobia up there, and we were some, really low level as children where you don't go up there. So there was no real communication, and that is like in a nuclear, smaller family where you have mom, dad, and your siblings, it's a lot easier to establish that kind of communication and establish that kind of trust. But as a family that is more extended, more heterogeneous and big, you it always creates that that void where you don't talk to your parents like you should, even though back then children didn't really have a right to talk. But at least if you came to your father to say, I want to complain, they would listen. But that strata was very difficult to communicate. So that we have to create that communication. Today it's there. You have 2 year olds, 3 year olds who come home and tell you the teacher did this or my friend did this. But back then we had nobody to talk to. That was number one. Number two thing is, if you look at the environment again, and if you've lived in that kind of environment, you would understand that parents that are super duper busy tend to pass on as much responsibility as they can or delegate to other family members if they are. And once they do that, I wouldn't really fault them to say it is their fault, but it's a fault that they didn't follow up. It's like a manager, you have subordinates, you delegate stuff, you have to follow up to make sure it gets done, right? But so parents always dish down from you, the big sister. If you were the big sister, you got to do one or two things, handle maybe the kitchen at some point or breakfast. We had those roles, right? So to me, the parent or the father was trying to like delegate, but his manner of delegation sort of gave too much power and no channel for like feedback. If I'm channeling you power, I want feedback. That's one thing that you need to create. You can discipline the children, but I want to know what you're disciplining them for, why they're being disciplined, and how they're being disciplined. And I need feedback from both you and the child. That way, if a child does something, before you discipline them, you know you have to answer to someone. But in that scenario, I don't think George knew he had to answer to someone. So he didn't have any channel to go feedback and say, look, I disciplined this child for this and this. I've been in that scenario, just the one I was talking about. My cousin, who was the eldest, there were like 14 of us children. When the parents come back, they're tired, they're in the living room. If we did something, punishment, simple punishment, we sit down and close our eyes for 2 hours in the bedroom. That's your punishment for like till dinner time. You're sitting there closing your eyes, and if your eye gets opened, you're knocked the hell out. We loved her. She's of late, but I still love her. And we used to talk about it as adults and laugh. I'm like, that was a military camp in our bedroom. But then you couldn't go back to the parents and tell them. Sometimes the parents come and find us in the position of punishment. They were like, what did you do? Oh, he did one, two, three things. Like, okay, punish them well. And he goes away. I'm like, what did I do to merit this? But you can't even talk. And today my cousins are around, we still talk about it and laugh, but it wasn't that severe. And she didn't do it in a way that would kind of felt like abuse. But you can understand that kind of family. In the household alone, there were 14 children, and there were probably 10 adults before so it was a big scenario. So I kind of understand. But as parents, you must have a channel for feedback. And those people, if somebody's metting out something, they know they would answer back to you. So my cousin always knew that when my uncle passes by and stops by the room and he sees us lined up, our eyes are closed or we're kneeling down, what did they do? She labels them. He's like, did you do it? I'm like, I only did a bit. Okay, you merited your punishment. So that kind of thing. We really need that. Today, I think we have more communication, but back in that day, I don't think we did. So that was what I wanted to say. I hope I didn't take too much time. Be cutting, because we can talk all day.
Yes,
I can be
okay.
angry.
Well, I found your point about lack of accountability in this case really, really a very valid point, because I think if George was held to more
Mm,
accountability, things wouldn't have gone as far as they did. So thank you so much for that input. And also the perspective about parents who are really busy having this tendency to delegate because
mhm.
yeah, they're really super busy in their lives. So it's really easier to just pass down that responsibility to someone older. After all, there's an adult there, and they just added up the child's best interest. So I actually see that happening in my life a little bit. I'm a very busy mom, and if I could outsource as many things as possible, I would. So I can understand that tendency to do that. Okay, so I'm going to move
Can
on
I,
to the
can
next
I,
question.
Leader,
And yes,
can I just say something? I do see
yes,
that happening in most huge families in the past, right? But I want to say that, especially in my case, maybe because my mom, my mom was a woman who had separated from her husband, and she guarded us like a hawk, you know. Um, I do see that happening in some families, but I want to say that in families where even in like villages, I would give an example of my grandmother. Let me not even go to my mom. My grandmother, my granddad had 73 children, and it's not an
Mm-hmm.
exaggeration.
Mm-hmm.
73 children,
Mine
polygamous
has
home with
74.
yes, polygamous home with 13 wives. My
Um,
grandmom, my grandmom, even though every woman had their day to cook, their day to take care of the tally or of the living room where the children all met and ate, my grandmom, it was known she was called the chief inspector. She would go in there and look at how much food you have given to her children. She doesn't give a damn if it's going to bring a rift in the family. She wanted to be sure that in Germany we say Vertrauen is good, control is better. And trust is good, control is better. My grandmom was that control freak. She would go in there and look and make sure that the amount of work you're giving to her own children is equally the amount of work you're giving to your own children, be it at a farm, no matter how far. What I'm trying to say is, even though that is something that used to happen in the past, there were some parents who were seriously conscious of the fact that they had to take care of their children. It happens today. I have friends in Cameroon who would go for days without seeing their children. Their children have drivers, house helps, cooks, um, nannies, and they don't see their children. How do you know what is happening to your child? It's not something of the past. It's not something about a small family. It is just something that tells us you, as a parent, you have a responsibility towards your child. And your responsibility towards your child is not only communication, it's also overseeing the people who are overseeing your child. And you need to do that like to the letter. That's
Okay.
just what I wanted to say.
Yeah. Thanks, Dora. For some reason, I went off for like 2 minutes. Yeah, but thank you so much for your input. So we don't spend so much time on one person. I'm just going to go to the next. Um, so the next is what can we as parents do to empower our children to speak up in case their privacy gets invaded or violated in any way? So anyone who hasn't spoken before, sorry, I didn't. Ferdinand, do you have anything to say, or anyone else who wants to start to comment on this? What we can do as parents to empower our children to speak up in case their privacy gets violated.
I would like to say something. It's Ivan here.
Okay,
Hello.
go right ahead. Yes.
Um, I think parents, they assuring the child, always assuring the child that you can talk to me, you can always come to me if there's anything. Don't be scared, don't be afraid, always talk to me, just assuring the child that you're open to listen to him or her whenever there's a problem. It can go a very long way and to make the child to want to talk to you, and not overreacting when the child does something wrong, and talking calmly, to communicating slowly and calmly with him, instead of shouting or attacking the child, especially when he's wrong. For example, me, when I was growing up, I felt at ease talking to my mom more than my dad, because my mom used to she was more approachable to talk to, but even when I did something wrong. So I think that's a good way to encourage the communication with the child.
Thanks, Ivan, for that. I totally agree. Like, giving your kids the feeling that they could talk to you about anything, being very approachable to your kids, definitely go a long way in yeah, helping to um, make it easy for them to talk to you in case they are uncomfortable or anything. Anyone else?
Can I add something?
Yes, please go ahead.
And also, before making it easy for the kids to be able to talk to us, we have to first of all educate them about sex education. Because if you don't educate them about sex education, even if you're easily approachable, she can always come to you and say other things. But for us, sex is looked as a taboo. So if you've never told her about her, no one touching her private or just playing with her in a funny way, she will be scared to even voice that to you because she thinks you are going to blame her that she let herself in that situation. So before we make it easy or possible for them to come to us and complain, we should be able to first of all educate them about sex education, no one playing with them and touching them inappropriately. That first is what we need to do as parents to pave the way for them to tell us anything, even when like a boy she's growing, a boy stops her on the way and want to talk to her. I mean, she should be able to tell you because you already told her. No one should say that to her without her letting you know. So I think we should first of all do that as parents to make them open up to us in any given situation where it arises.
Totally correct, Karin. Yeah, so it's really important that we teach our kids from an early age what is private, what isn't private, um, so that they know when something is inappropriate, and together with being approachable, that will definitely go a long way in helping to prevent such things from happening. Thank you, Karin. So I think there's a follow-up question to this one. Since Karen brought up this about educating our children about sex and stuff, so that was actually the next question on my list. So, from what age should we educate our children about private body parts, about what is inappropriate behavior? So, what do you guys say? Like, what age is a good age to start that sex education?
I'll say from the age the child can understand their body, you
Yeah.
know. So 4, 5, because we've seen cases of babies, you
Totally.
know, being raped. So I would say from the moment a child can understand what you're talking about, understand their body, you just have to start telling them these things. You can tell them in subtle ways, but they have to understand what you're telling them. And to add to what Karen said before, you also have to make them understand that even adults, even family members,
Mm-hmm.
are not supposed to touch them, inappropriately because they might be confident or, they feel confident that a family member means good, that trust that they have, but stuff like that you have to tell children. There shouldn't be any age limit. So the moment the child understands, you start telling them this thing and keep telling them. It's not an easy conversation to have with your child, especially us African parents. We don't find it easy to talk about our bodies and sexuality with our children.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we have to overcome that gap and do it.
Yeah. Can I?
Totally agree with you, Mbole. That's yeah. Yeah, go
Can
ahead, Brown.
I? Good.
Yes.
So, I will speak from my own experience, and I completely agree with Wale. As soon as a child understands their body parts, which part is which, you can start telling them. Like mine personally, I have a 3-year old. Thank God she thinks like an adult. Well, she thinks she's an adult, but I kind of help her create boundaries already. Like they may not understand what the thing is, but they understand boundaries because from a very young age, children they understand boundaries because you've given them boundaries. You don't go there, you don't touch this. So that's what I do to her. Like I tell her, what is this part? It's PP, it's bum bum. So nobody touches PP and bum bum. Only mommy touches PP and bum bum, and only to wash PP and bum bum. So those are the kind of things that I help her do because at this point, if you try to tell her, uncle shouldn't touch, Nana, she wouldn't understand and she would take it as play. But just helping her to create a boundary around certain places on her body, like who she gives a kiss to and who she plays with, that kind of helps them at a young age to understand that you can't come and cross this place. Even to me, she gives me a boundary when to wash pee. Now it's she washes pee by herself. So we literally have a fight who washes pee because she's like, no, nobody touches pee. I think I put too many boundaries there. Now I'm locked out. That kind of thing.